So I used to look at analytics before we had an audience, and so I was studying the analytics as a tea leaves of what the consumer sentiment is. But now I'm reading their comments, and so these are from strangers, from friends, from people in my community outside, and I build a composite of their sentiment, and I try to steer the company so that we give and create more joy in the world, and we try to diminish the other stuff that's not good.
I agree with that too. I think there's a lot of learning. Sometimes the learning isn't what well, often it's actually not what
Right.
you think it was going to be. Tell me a few things that you think our industry does wrong.
What I want to just define industry first. Which industry are you referring to?
Well, I'll give you a big umbrella by saying creative, but more specifically, ad agencies, design firms,
Yeah.
just communicators.
I think there's a lot of things. So I'll hit high and low on this. I think creative people generally are not very good at being self-directed. They're other-directed. And so we look at ad agencies, and I wonder this a lot. Like, how come there's so few ad agencies who are really good at branding, at marketing, messaging, finding customer? Why don't they just create their own products? Why don't they become their own clients? Why doesn't Wieden and Kennedy have their own shoe line? I don't understand that myself. They've been really good at building a multi-billion-dollar business for Phil Knight. Why didn't they do it for themselves? And so these are kinds of things I think about. And then unfortunately, that ripples all the way down from the big agencies that doing, the big global agencies, all the way down to the solo practitioner in their studio. They're waiting for someone to find a problem and give it to them for them to solve. And Brian Collins talks about this. Like we have to shift away from this mindset of being problem solvers to problem seekers. Like we have to go find a problem, scratch our own itch, and then when we find that problem, why aren't we the ones who benefit from the recognition of the problem and the creation of the solution?
Can I dive into that answer a little bit because you're kind of triggering some questions that I hadn't written down. One is it possible that part of the answer is that, and this touches on another question that I was going to ask you is what do you think about award shows, which we'll go into later, which touches on my concern here, which is I think that some of this stuff is or gels, i.e., works because of budget, not because of creative. And so I think that a lot of creative people just create. We have no way of guaranteeing anything or assuring anybody whether it's going to work or it's not going to work. And of course, the more money you throw at something, sometimes it works because of the money and the support. But I think that maybe that's why creators don't do their own thing because they know that you can't just have a good idea. You have to have a good idea with a lot of backup.
Right.
So, and by backup, I mean money.
And knowledge and experience and marketing know-how and business acumen.
But that's a really good question that I'd never thought about is since we are so good at marketing, why aren't we marketing ourselves? And the other thing too is I found that where almost every magazine, of course, there are exceptions to every rule, but almost every magazine in our sector is poorly designed.
Well, I recently resubscribed to Wired magazine because I remember sharing concepts that I read in Wired years ago and to this day. So I'm like, I'll support Wired magazine. So my first issue came back in the mail and I opened it up. And it's as thin as I've ever seen a magazine.
Mm-hmm.
Almost all the advertising out from it.
Mm.
So if you are in the space of creating periodical stories, interests, research, whatever, white paper, it's a weird business to be in.
Mm-hmm.
All the ad dollars are gone. And I'm missing that, to be honest, because I like seeing ads that were targeted towards common interests. I wanted to learn about those companies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was a time when I used to buy magazines as my school books, basically. Mostly fashion magazines. But
Yeah.
have you ever abandoned a project or a client